this morning, business leaders has heavily criticised Boris Johnson's keynote speech for lacking a coherent economic plan to tackle rising energy prices.
Meanwhile, his pledge to boost teacher salaries has been slammed by his opponents and labelled a less generous recycling of a previous scheme. The Education Secretary Nadhim Zahawi joins us now. A very good morning to you, Mr. Zahawi, and congratulations on your new job. You have an extremely important job, because I think a lot of parents and teachers will think right now the education of this generation of students has been perhaps critically damaged. What is the plan?
You're quite right, and I think teachers and support staff in schools have gone above and beyond in helping primary school teachers, children, secondary school children, and of course those in colleges to recover. We've put £3 billion to work already. 1.4 billion is into additional tutoring time. So we're doing 6 million up to 15 hours, so 1 hour each, tutoring courses to help those children catch up before the end of this Parliament. Our pledge, I said it in my speech at Party Conference, it is a moral imperative that we help those children catch up before the end of this Parliament, and that is what I'm focusing on.
You will be very aware that under your predecessor, Gavin Williamson, the government appointed Education Recovery Czar, because you had someone in place in order to advise you on this, Sir Kevin Collins, submitted a report calling for 10 times that much, £15 billion, to be spent over 3 years on measures including extra tutoring, but also longer school days and a cash boost. He resigned because you've only put in £1.4 billion. You're not doing enough, are you? I mean, these children have missed out and still face missing out because of COVID. Days, weeks, months of education.
So my pledge to your viewers and the country, as is the Prime Minister's pledge, is children will catch up by the end of this Parliament. The 1.4 billion you spoke about was on top of the 1.7 billion. So we're at just over £3 billion on recovery. By next month, I'll have the first cut of the evaluation of the tutoring programme, but it already looks good. I asked the team to look at some meta-analysis from the Educational Endowment Foundation that I know Kevin Collins so values, and of course about 100 schools, and it's looking really positive, especially for primary school children. My concern is the children who have the least time to recover, so the 16 to 19-year-olds and secondary school children, and we will do more, as the Prime Minister has already indicated. We are in the middle of a spending review, so and I'm making sure...
That's a very good point, because you've just said that there's only a fifth of the amount of money that was recommended by your own Education Recovery Czar is being put into education. And those particular age groups are disproportionately affected. They lost, effectively, a year of learning, and yet you've told them that when the exams happen next year, they're not going to get anything like the results that were given through the teacher assessments of this year. I mean, it's a very demotivating time for those students. What are you doing for those years, the GCSE, BTEC and A-level years?
So I announced before going to Party Conference, in fact, it was my priority to make sure we get the announcement out, working with the regulator, with Ofqual. What we did was we put fairness at the heart of the decision we made. So the children who'll be sitting GCSEs and A-levels will not be graded on pre-pandemic grades. We're looking at going halfway this year and then fully recovering to pre-pandemic grades the year after. And actually, teachers, students, families, universities have all, I think, supported that position that we announced. They wanted that announcement early because then universities can make those offers, especially for medicine, for things like pharmacy and, of course, veterinary medicine. So we did that announcement early on, and it's the right thing to do for us to make sure that those who have had, especially those who are going to sit exams now this year, who've had their education disrupted so much by COVID, have the fairest outcome by doing it in this way.
One of the assessments of Boris Johnson's speech yesterday came from the Adam Smith Institute. Described it as bombastic and vacuous. That was their critical appraisal of it. I think Bright Blue, which is a conservative think tank, said there was no inspiring new vision or policy. The one policy he did outline was one of yours, and one that you've already given us, was the pledge to add this bonus to science and maths teachers of £3,000 to come and to move to areas where they're in need and to retain that job. This is a policy that we also saw a few years ago, didn't we? Back in 2019, it was abandoned as a policy. It was a £5,000 pledge there to get people to come and do this. So it seems like you're recycling a policy that didn't have the effect you wanted it to have back in 2019.
This policy is different in the sense that those teachers are eligible for up to 5 years. So the starting salary is now about to touch £30,000 a year, which was our pledge in the manifesto. So it was a 10% bonus, effectively, so we can retain more teachers. And we've seen some really good evidence from the US and elsewhere that sort of bonus delivers 30% more teachers to stay in the profession, especially in those schools that really need them in the most disadvantaged areas.
The policy that you had previously has been described by the Education Policy Institute as being abandoned because it wasn't the success. And now you're just bringing it back in a slightly different guise, but for less money, for £3,000, not £5,000.
Well, I will always be evidence-led, as I was with the vaccination programme. And when I see evidence from places like the US that actually this retention bonus makes teachers eligible for it for up to 5 years, up to £3,000, actually delivers 30% more retention than you would otherwise, then it's a good thing to do. I'll always be evidence-led and pragmatic about these things. If I see something that works, I will absolutely adopt it.
What about the evidence that the previous policy was abandoned? That's a policy that we had over here. That's not from evidence in the States, which may well have worked over there, but this was a policy from your government that was abandoned in 2019.
Well, look, I've only been in the department for 2 weeks as Secretary of State. Policies that work in terms of helping us with chemistry teachers, maths teachers, computing, physics, where we need them in those schools in the most disadvantaged areas. And if I see it working, then I will adopt it and I will evaluate it. And I'll come back on your show and I hope be able to share that data. Data and transparency will be my ally in this journey with teachers, with universities, with schools, with FE colleges, across the board, with early years, of course, which I talked about in my speech at Party Conference.
Did you know about the previous scheme in 2019?
The officials showed me the work they had done. We think this is a better scheme because the eligibility is for 5 years, up to 5 years, that you can take advantage of this thing. So we think this will work much better.
So the previous one didn't work because it was too short-term?
That was some of the evidence, but I think what we've done now is it should produce much better results. I'll be very happy to come on your show and share the evaluation.
Okay.
We'll look forward to that.
The speech yesterday was full of positive boosterism, which is the phrase often applied to Boris Johnson. What he didn't seem to acknowledge on the day that the £1,000 was cut from universal credit claimants, when gas prices went up, wholesale gas prices went up 40%, energy bills are going up, inflation's going up, national insurance is going up. Didn't seem to acknowledge the cost of living crisis that people are facing. Is he out of touch? It's all very well to do a very positive, all guns blazing speech to conference, but he needs to realise what the real voters are facing, doesn't he?
And you're absolutely right, which is why, as we arrived in Manchester, we announced £500 million to help those families through this winter with the cost of the utility bills, with essential foods, through local government, who know exactly who those families are. We're doing more on, obviously, the help on winter fuel allowance and, of course, Warm Homes Grant for those families that need it the most and those pensioners that need it the most. Global gas prices, you're also right, Susanna, in saying there's massive pressure on global gas prices because global economies have rebounded a lot faster from COVID, and there is that issue. The thing to do is to also think long-term, of course. How do you make sure you invest in renewables, in nuclear, so that we're not overly reliant on hydrocarbons?
Can we just touch, before we let you go, because I know we're up against time, we've had a tweet from a number of people, as we always do, Minister, when we get government ministers on. Jamie says, please can you ask Nadhim Zahawi what he's going to do to help with school attendance? COVID cases are at an all-time high. You want to rely on data. I think the latest figures from your department show COVID cases in schools are rising significantly, up 72% in a fortnight. Are you looking at trying to implement restrictions in order to try and maintain the attendance at school? Are we going to see masks coming back, social distancing, bubbles back into schools? I know that where my boys' school at the moment, a number of their friends have got family members with COVID, but because of the new rules, they don't have to isolate with them at home. So we're fully expecting one of those boys to get COVID and then pass it on to my children at some point.
So I want to obviously protect education. The Children's Commissioner did a brilliant piece of work. 500,000 children responded to her survey. The one thing they said is they want to be back at school because they valued that interaction with their friends and their teachers, and it was really good for their mental health as well. So that is my priority. 99% of schools are open. That's really good news. We've got attendance at about 90%. That fluctuates depending on obviously the infection rates, as you quite rightly describe. I do have and I think it's only responsible to do that, to have a contingency plan. I don't want to go back to bubbles, because that really does reduce attendance drastically down, and that's not good for the children or their futures or their mental health.
What's your contingency plan then? Because, as you say, 10% currently off school. It doesn't matter how many schools are open, it matters how many children are missing school. How are you going to make sure that there aren't more absences? Is it masks? Is it air filtration? What is your contingency plan and what kicks it in?
So we've already sent out thousands of CO2 monitors. We'll send out all 300,000 CO2 monitors. A big ramp up this month and next month on that. And of course, I'm looking at air filtration systems as well to make sure we help schools get access to those. And we look at contingencies, including masks. I don't want to go to the contingency plans if I don't need to. If I can make sure that schools can remain without the bubbles, because I think that does impact attendance massively. So we will do everything to make sure that we can continue to keep schools open, teachers teaching and children being at school.
We saw a few of your colleagues enjoying the
karaoke.
The post-political party at conference. A number of karaoke performances done. Therese Kofi singing "I've Had the Time of My Life," which I think is an unfortunate song to be singing at a time when she's in charge of the universal credit uplift. I wonder what you made of that. Do you understand people's frustration, the accusation that the Tory party are out of touch when you see her on there enjoying herself clearly post-conference, but at a sensitive time?
It is a sensitive time, but she also was the Secretary of State who got the $500 million that we announced as we were arriving in Manchester to deliver that additional help for those families that will really be in need of that. Now, the good news in terms of...
So you don't think it was a mistake to sing that song?
Yeah, there were Labour Party parties and dance-offs and singing that I saw. It happens at Labour Party conferences, Conservative Party conferences, Liberal Party conferences, all party conferences. And I think slightly unfair to sort of link this with what we're trying to do to help the most needy with that $500 million that we announced just as we were getting to party conference. And of course, what we're doing on jobs. The Kickstarter scheme is £2 billion. The Restart scheme is £2.9 billion. There are 2 million fewer people out of work today than that was forecast through the pandemic. So we're doing a lot of work to help those in most need with the utility bills, with their food, as well as, of course, deliver higher skills, which is what as I will repeat the PM, skills is where it's at.
Yes. All right. Nadhim Zahawi, thanks very much indeed. And just for anyone watching, $500 million is quite a small amount compared to the $6 billion that £20 a week currently provides for those in most need.
I'd quite like to know what Nadhim Zahawi's karaoke tune would be. Go to.
Is he still there?
I didn't go to karaoke, and with a voice like mine, I would avoid karaoke completely.
So you don't have a go-to karaoke, Mrs. Zahawi?
We don't need no education? No? Another brick in the wall? No, just, you know...
Pink Floyd, although that was my favourite song when I was at school, once I learnt the language. Because I came here when I was 11, I couldn't speak a word of English, but had parents who really valued education. I want the system to work for the 11-year-old whose parents don't have the wherewithal, and that's my target. I'll on that journey, data and transparency and information and evidence will I hope, deliver that.
OK. Thank you very much, Nadhim Zahawi.